Mike, welcome to the show. Rooney, my man, how are you? Good to see you. It is your time of the year, and I'm so glad we've got you for a few minutes on the show today. How are you, sir?
I'm good, BG. Good to see you. Yes, it's the next 30 days of life are awesome. Really, really awesome.
So you've basically worked for every single media company that's ever covered college baseball, and I'll let you kind of explain your path. But what I'd love you to give some insight to people out there for is my first College World Series in Omaha was 2007. That was Oregon State and Joey Wong, and they won the whole thing, and that was like a big deal. What was your first year you went to Omaha as a member of the media? Because I know you've been in a variety of sort of ways. And how is that press box different today in 2022 than it was the first year you went as a media member?
Yeah, so I would say, man, it's so interesting. So I've missed Omaha. So as a player and a coach, lost the game to go to Omaha 3 times. Never went as a player, never went as a coach, but still great memories, right? Like my senior year at Notre Dame, 1992, we lose to Miami. Our shortstop is Craig Counsell. Their catcher is Charles Johnson. Like those are memories for life. And, the one that stands out for me as a coach is 2000. We lose a regional final to Texas and Augie Garrido. It was the first Texas team he took to Omaha. Who knew? And then in 2003 we lost to Cal State Fullerton in Game 3, and we had 5 big leaguers, right? We had Larish and Pedroia and Ethier and Tuffy Ghostwitch, and they had 10 big leaguers. Fullerton had Red Turner and Suzuki, and so anyway, like that stuff is heartbreaking in the moment, but. In 2009, I got to go to Omaha, and that was the old joint, Rosenblatt, like you went to, BG. I was the director of baseball operations for ASU. I'd come back after coaching there, but I was doing the radio with Tim Healy, who's the voice of the Sun Devils, and that was an incredible, it was Rosenblatt, so it was amazing. ASU had Kipnis and Cole Calhoun and Mike Leake, and it was a killer experience. So the new place is different, as you guys know, and I think I've been every year now since 2014, either, like you mentioned, BG, like all of this work for all these different media outlets. So, I mean, it's changed in a million different ways, but the soul of the event is still amazing. I mean, it's still Omaha, and every college player wakes up thinking about Omaha and they go to bed thinking about Omaha. And that's probably that, combined with the people of the city of Omaha, is what makes it incredible.
Part of the uniqueness is that singular destination. I mean, it's not like I'm a huge college basketball fan, but I mean, it's different every year. I mean, you could be in St. Louis, you could be in New Orleans, you could be wherever else. What is it about that singularity, do you think, that has kind of created the atmosphere?
Yeah, I think it's the people. It always begins with the people, and BG, from being there. I've never been to the World Cup in soccer, but this is what I picture the World Cup in soccer is like, that the city of Omaha just closes for 2 weeks and just hugs this event. And, like the first time you go to Omaha, you get off the plane with one of the teams, you get on the bus, and then you have an organization like the Knights of Columbus of Omaha, or, one of those groups, VFW, or you have an association assigned to you, and they get on your bus and they've got Krispy Kreme donuts that they pass out. And, just like it starts there and it never stops. When your team goes from through the hotel lobby to the bus, there's kids there getting autographs and people with signs. Like the hotels make a big deal of the teams. So I think, the fact that it's been Omaha since the late 1940s, that makes a difference. Rosenblatt, I love the new place, Charles Schwab, but Rosenblatt was special, right? Like it was Wrigley Field, it was Fenway Park. And so that park just got in your soul. And so I think all of those things wrapped together is the deal.
And from a financial standpoint and a coverage standpoint, I agree. It's less charming. It doesn't have the same sort of soulful vibes that you're talking about when you're out like in the neighborhoods, right? It's sort of like Lambeau. Like Lambeau, if you've never been to Lambeau Field, Lambeau Field is like inside of a neighborhood, and it's very different than almost any major sports stadium in there. But what it has allowed is it's allowed for a lot more access. It's allowed for more media, more fans, more celebratory stuff. You got buildings and restaurants all around the building now. So it does On the other side of the coin, while we have to sort of opine the loss of that charm, we do have to embrace the growth that it is allowed. And obviously some of this is TV, right? TV now wants to be involved in covering college baseball, but also the coaches and the people involved, I think, are so much more like, are the coaches more savvy today about how to market and grow the product more than just their own brand? Or has that always been a thing in baseball?
I think it's always been a thing for the coaches that were building college baseball. You know, like if you think about, I would consider the 80s like a golden age for college baseball, and the Ron Frazier's of Miami, the Skip Bertmans of LSU, you know, the Augie Garrido when he was at Fullerton, Texas. Like these guys, Gene Stevenson at Wichita State, these guys have always had big personalities that were perfect for the media. I think about Wayne Graham of Rice. But you know, they were the minority. You know, like they had kind of put the sport on their back and were carrying it up the hill. Now, I think to your point, BG, that if you're a coach that's not media savvy, you are kind of putting a glass ceiling on your career. I mean, it's such a part of the job now. Those guys in the 80s and 90s, they were just, you know, they kind of were naturally wired that way. And they knew Ron Frazier Ron Frazier probably is the reason that the College World Series ever got on ESPN. And, you know, and now, when I think about my time at ESPN, I mean, the College World Series is one of the most coveted assignments at ESPN for the staff people. You know, you think about Little League World Series, Monday Night Football, the NBA, clearly. People at ESPN, employees at ESPN are dying to be part of, you know, they're lobbying to be part of the College World Series. So that part makes it really cool.
Major League Baseball has, in some senses plateaued, whether you're looking at whatever metric you want to look at. You want to look at attendance or ratings or whatever else. But college baseball has really been on this sort of upward trajectory here, particularly over the last 10 years. Is it just because of, you know, that kind of constant ESPN coverage, or what is it that has made college baseball kind of, you know, capture people's attention in a way that maybe some other college sports haven't?
The SEC, you know, I mean, like if you were making me give a really simple answer, like if you're aligned with the SEC, you're aligned with a space rocket, right? So it's like, but you know, like I think the sport has been a little bit of a hidden gem. You know, recently MLB, you know, Rob Manfred takes a lot of heat, but I think and again, you got to account for my bias here, but I think one stroke of genius for Rob Manfred is he's kind of looked at the owners like, hey, why are we fighting with college baseball every year? Like, this is a free feeder system that is probably better for our players. So let's go ahead and embrace this. Because again, it's free and it's
$0.
Awesome. Yes, right. So yeah, I think it's all of those things, really.
Well, and it's so funny because that's what I was going to ask is how much is baseball still fighting it? Like even just having I've been on the soapbox and you've heard me do this rant like a billion times, but having a pitcher in a super regional game on a Friday morning, like also having a chance of being drafted that day. Like, was it Pat Burrell that famously was at the plate while he was getting drafted in the World Series? It's like, how you could not show us that you care any less by having the draft during the most important part of the baseball tournament. I also think it's easy for fans to parachute in. And now they identify the players a little bit more. They identify some of the coaches a little bit more, but you can parachute in and get super involved for like a month when there's nothing else happening. And that allows you to sort of latch onto these personalities and, you know, Mississippi State and like all the goofiness of what goes to a baseball dugout. I think all of that has built to where we are now.
Yeah. And, you know, like the SEC environments, like you mentioned, Mississippi State, those environments have become so cool. And, you know, the SEC environments, and there's others too, right? The Big 12's got great environments. The facilities have improved. But I think what the SEC has nailed is kind of the Wrigley Field phenomenon where the event is the social event. The game just happens. And now they are very passionate fans, but, you know, they're there to barbecue and have a couple pops and be with their friends. And they love on these players, and it's like minor league baseball, but the kids don't leave. You know, they're there 3 or 4 years, so that's really cool. So yeah, I mean, I think it's all of those things are awesome, and it's you know, the kids. It's such a Here's the bottom line too, guys. The SEC is making money at baseball. it's a revenue generator in that league too. So that changes the equation as well.
How many conferences make money at baseball?
I mean, really just the SEC. Yeah. I think the other conferences, like I think there's schools in the Big 12 where they're at least break even. And you guys know it, finances in college sports are so wonky. It's like, now this may not last much longer, but you could make an argument that baseball at 11.7 is a revenue generating sport for the school because of tuition, right? Like they're not maybe a revenue generating sport for the athletic department, but that's 23 players on paying full freight. Like the math club isn't necessarily generating that. I don't. So that's where the finances get a little. But the SEC, just forget about that part. The SEC is just flat, making money in baseball. And then you guys know the TV part matters too.
What we talk about this a lot in sort of college football, but in college baseball, you're right. These SEC programs. I mean, this year it's Tennessee, but it has been Vanderbilt, but it has been Arkansas, it has been LSU. What would be good for the sport to see, like another kind of regional center? Is it a West Coast thing? If we saw like a rise of West Coast teams, like a rise of a dominant Fullerton again, or a rise of some of the Pac-12 powers again, would that be good to kind of offset this, or should we just be riding the SEC?
Yeah, I'm more from the latter school of thought. Like my thing is like a rising tide lifts all boats, and I think about basketball. Like basketball, not that they're perfect, but they kind of gear their sport around, hey, the Kentuckys and the Kansases are going to grow the sport. And then UMBC and Binghamton, if you guys want to come along for the ride, that's awesome. And we're not going to exclude you, but we're not going to make rules that, help you be better than Kentucky. Like we're going to help Kentucky grow the sport. Right. And then you guys. So the things to me are, I would like us to do some different things in our tournament. There's an idea out there called 32 hosts, where instead of having a 4-team regional like we're going to have this weekend, we would everything would be a 3-game series until Omaha. And then that way, like right now we have 16 host sites every regional round, but we really don't, right? Like we have 9 or 10 ACC host sites, and then the rest of the country gets to divvy up the other 6. And I'm not bagging on the ACC or the SEC. They've earned that. But if we could bring our tournament in a 3-game series to 32 places every year, now you're starting to, and by the way, a 3-game set gets really awesome. Like it's kind of like it's our version of the basketball single loss elimination. You mentioned fan interest, BG. Our regional round, like as a college baseball nerd, I love it. But for the average fan, like me trying to explain that to my mom, she's like, okay, just tell me who won, right? Like I'm done.
But the supers, oh man, you build rivalries, you build history, you build connection there. I what's interesting about baseball too is that you also have stories like Fresno State winning a national championship as a team that was one of the last ones in, which doesn't happen normally in basketball and never in football. You've got Stony Brook and Kent State and Indiana. But it sounds like what you're saying is it's still not smart financially, good business to invest. Because I know the Big Ten is spent on facilities, but like, it's still not good business necessarily for a lot of those programs to invest, right? Or is it good for Stetson because they've got 2 great pitchers or whatever?
Yeah, it's not great business for, like the Big Ten's got a proposal out there. They call it the new model, where the Big Ten would actually like to move the season back an entire month. Because their claim is that if you let us play home baseball games in May and June, we would make money because they've got minor league teams right next door to them that are printing money. And so, that there's parts of that proposal I really like. There's parts of it that feel kind of extreme, but you guys know right now we're just not in an environment in college sports to make any type of modifications because nobody even knows what it's, it'd be like a country not even knowing what language they're going to speak in 3 years, right? Like how many laws are we changing when we don't even know what our currency is going to be in 3 years?
Runes, I have no idea what you're talking about. I
That's right.
All right, let's talk, Cav, unless you got anything else on the media side of things. I want to get your couple thoughts here on Tennessee before we get you out. First of all, I saw the performance on the selection show. Tremendous job by you with the fur coat. Absolutely great. Is Tennessee good for the game? And how is Tennessee's personality and their culture and their sort of like thumbing the nose at like, how is that received nationally around the country in other areas?
Yeah, not well, right? Like they are the villain. And so, like you can argue that having a villain is really good for the sport. And here's the thing, like I've gone both ways. I lost an entire Saturday this year thanks to the Tennessee fan base. It was self-inflicted. I referred
you can't talk about the stadium that way, buddy. You can't talk about it.
Yeah, referring to Lindsey Nelson Stadium, which by the way is an awesome joint. Like when they get it renovated, it's going to be amazing. The setting, it's really cool. But yeah, me calling Lindsey Nelson Stadium Williamsport was it's
easy to hit dingers there. It's easy to hit dingers.
I mean, the place does go downhill. Like home plate is higher than the bottom of the outfield fence. But anyway, it be that as it may, like it is. Hey, Tennessee, this is a historically good team. They lead the country in ERA and home runs. No one's even sniffed something like that since the mid 90s when LSU was similar, but not 1-1 in 96, the Warren Morris team. So, so they're good. Like Tony Vitello, the personalities are John Calipari, their style of play, the brashness. This is like the Miami Hurricanes football team of the 1980s. They're so good. Remember, in Miami Hurricanes, there was the shtick, or not the shtick, there was the bravado, but every player was a future All-Pro. And that's who Tennessee is. I mean, it's first round picks everywhere. Here's my concern. And believe me, like the list of positives is like 100. There's one concern. When they had that kerfuffle with Auburn, you've got players from Tennessee approaching the Auburn dugout, and you've got Gabe Gross and Tim Hudson coming out of the Auburn dugout. Like, what if that escalated? That's going to change careers. Like what if somebody got hurt? What if college kids start beaning people because of these? So like, it's like that kind of, where does the line stop is where I get nervous. But other than that, I mean, what Tennessee has accomplished, and you guys know, I mean, the Vols struggled so badly from 2006 to 2017. They didn't get anywhere. They were never even a bubble team. And now they are like we're doing picks, Tennessee versus the field. 5 years ago, they couldn't even get to the bubble. It's just remarkable.
They couldn't even get to Hoover, Mike.
Yeah.
They couldn't even get for those that don't know, 2 teams in the SEC don't go to Hoover. And that was Tennessee many, many, many years. So what do you make of all the dynamics of the coaches? The healthy, like Tim Corbin and Tony Vitello are very different. You've got all these guys that have been around and have won national championships at all these different places. Like, how healthy is the state of SEC coaching right now?
I think it's the one thing about baseball is that's kind of a unifier is that, hey, we got 11.7 scholarships. We only got 2 paid coaches. So there is part of this where the coaches have to come together to, to help grow the sport. So I think that's helpful. But yeah, I mean, like these rivalries they're intense and they're getting more intense. It's getting more like football and basketball. So, like, I don't know, like are Mike Krzyzewski and Roy Williams friends? I don't know. Like maybe they'll be friends someday. Maybe they won't. We are kind of going down that road. But I don't know. Maybe that's not such a bad thing.
What do you make of having Corbin and Vitello here now? I mean, we're biased because we're watching this sort of from in-state, but I mean, that is arguably two of the best coaches now 2 hours away. It just seems like it has the makings of a year-on-year kind of great rivalry. And Corbin was very diplomatic in Hoover after they got put out by the Vols. It was really interesting to me to see someone who's had as much success as Corbin playing it pretty close to the vest. I feel like we got a couple of years of great rivalry in front of us.
Oh, no question. And even though Vanderbilt recruits nationally, this last run for Vandy, there's a lot of Tennessee kids,
a lot of local
roster.
kids.
Yeah. I mean, and if I understand it right, like Drew Beam is like from right in Vandy's backyard. He's a Murfreesboro kid. And so that recruiting thing is shifting. Now, again, Vandy can go anywhere with their recruiting model, but it sure is, it's been nice for them to be able to recruit in their backyard. So yeah, I think the rivalry will continue to develop. We know Vandy's not going anywhere. It sure seems like Tennessee's not going anywhere. It's hey, and then you got Sully. I mean, the SEC West takes up a lot of oxygen, but the SEC East has gotten, infinitely more interesting in the last 3 years.
Well, it does help when David Price and Sonny Gray are from down the road as well, which is also right. It's how he got it all started was those two. What I also find fascinating, and we'll let you go on your, I want your prediction on the tournament, but I love what makes a great rivalry in any sport is layers, is personal layers, and the socioeconomic differences between Vanderbilt and Tennessee and how they play the game and how that matches those differences and the layers of the student body and the culture and the personality. Like, to me, it's like everything that you could ever want in competitive rivalry is Vanderbilt and Tennessee baseball, and we get to do it right in our state every year. I think it's great.
Awesome.
So, all right. So I know you did the whole Tennessee versus the field thing. Give me your picks in Omaha. Who's playing in the final two series, and can Tennessee overcome the starstruck, big eyes? Like the thing that happened to them last year is they got out there. Their eyeballs got big. I guess that stadium, it's not TD Ameritrade anymore. I guess I screwed up.
Insert financial sponsor.
Yeah,
that's right. What Cap said.
Hedgefund.com park. So that clearly affected them, and you've got to play the game a little differently out there. Have they learned from that, and can they get to the final pairing? Who do you like to play in the final?
Yeah, my final would be Tennessee, and I would probably pick Oklahoma State right now. I think here's the other thing that helps Tennessee. They did not play well in Omaha last year. The park does not suit them. It's like the polar opposite of Lindsey Nelson Stadium. However, Tennessee can win anywhere, any type of game if they choose to do so. They have no weaknesses. They can play for power. They can run. They pitch. They've got depth. They defend. So Tennessee can win any type of game they care to win. So I think last year's 0-2 in Omaha helps them. And then I think the other thing that helps them is losing that series at Kentucky, where the weather was bad and the park played huge, and Kentucky just adjusted better. So I think that really helps them too. You guys said I did pick Tennessee to win. Mostly it's because I wanted to wear the fur coat, but I do believe Tennessee's going to be in the finals. Because there's no way they don't get to Omaha. There's no one can beat them twice at Lindsey Nelson Stadium. They're so built, they're so good in that park. And then I just think the experience of last year in Omaha helps them. And they're just so much better than everybody else. I mean, they're just so good. But here's the two things that can trip up Tennessee: umpires and Tennessee, right? Like them getting wound up with umpires and them just getting distracted by the size of the park or whatever. But I don't know, like Frank Anderson, Tony Vitello, Josh Elander, they're just that's a good coaching staff. That probably gets missed. Like, these guys are on it. So I think we're watching Tennessee for a while.
Yep. Is there a dark horse anywhere?
There's here, I'll give you guys this. There's a lot of teams in this tournament that have been to like 3 or 4 regionals in a row. I'm thinking about teams like Army, Wright State, Campbell, who's unfortunately in the Tennessee bracket, UC Santa Barbara. Those teams are dangerous. Like, that's the Stony Brook model from 2012. That's the Kent State model, where you get a bunch of kids that have been in a bunch of regionals. We probably have 6 or 7 teams like that this year. So I think that's where you're going to see the upsets.
Don't be surprised if you see some regional upsets, maybe not in the super regional weekend, but in the first weekend is what you're saying.
And Gonzaga's the other team off the radar. Gonzaga's got the second best rotation in the country outside of Tennessee. They've got 3 kids that throw 95 plus in their rotation. So Gonzaga is my other, I call them sleeper. They're not a number 1 seed.
And it's funny, you mentioned the Kentucky series. I think watching Kentucky come back to tie the game in Hoover and then them putting like a 10 spot on the board, it was a big statement for Tennessee. Runes, make sure you're eating red meat every single morning at 10 a.m. in Omaha. I can't wait for this month of coverage. It is one of my favorite events. I tell everybody every year, the Indy 500 and the College World Series are my 2 favorite events to go to as a fan. and the guys like you that make it happen. We really appreciate the coverage. So thank you for giving us so much of your time during a busy week. We really appreciate it. And tell everybody what are you all doing? Like, where can everybody catch you and follow you and interact with all your stuff?
So just my Twitter is Mike_Rooney. And then so I've got Squeeze Play the next 2 weekends, which is our college baseball whip around. It's on ESPN Plus, and then they put it on linear channels. So that's the it's our red zone for college baseball. So that for the next 2 weekends, and then we'll go to Omaha and do some stuff for Sirius and D1 baseball and some ESPN stuff too.
Well,
so.
I'm super jealous, and great to see your face, man. We'll talk soon. Thank you.
All right, see you boys.
Awesome.
Thanks.